There are moments on live television that nobody plans for. Moments that cut right through the noise and remind you what really matters in life. You're about to see one of those moments. On what looked like a completely normal Tuesday afternoon, in front of a packed studio audience, a man said something that stopped Family Feud host Steve Harvey dead in his tracks. A contestant, standing right there at the podium, microphone in his hand, cameras rolling, looked out at the audience and said his marriage was the biggest mistake of his life. He laughed when he said it. Like it was funny, like 30 years of a woman's love and loyalty was some kind of punchline. Steve Harvey didn't laugh. What happened in the next few minutes wasn't scripted. It wasn't planned. Nobody from the production team saw it coming, but when it was over, 200 people in that studio were on their feet, and the woman sitting in the front row, the wife everyone had just heard her husband humiliate, was wiping tears from her eyes. Not tears of pain, tears of something she hadn't felt in a very long time. Gerald Carson was 58 years old. He was a retired high school football coach from Memphis, Tennessee. A big man with a loud voice and a wide smile that had charmed everyone around him for as long as anyone could remember. For 32 years, he had coached kids who had nothing, pushing them towards something better. Parents trusted him, players adored him, the community respected him, but at home there was a different story. His wife, Donna Carson, was 56. She had spent the last 3 decades raising 3 children, supporting Gerald through every coaching job, including the 2 seasons when he was let go and the family had to survive on her income alone. She had worked as a school librarian for 28 years, quietly building the kind of life that doesn't make headlines but holds everything together. She was the woman who remembered every birthday, packed every cooler for every away game, and sat in the bleachers in the cold rain when nobody else showed up. When Gerald retired, Donna had imagined they would finally travel together, finally take the trips they had postponed for 30 years, finally just be 2 people who chose each other, not just 2 people managing a household. What she got instead was a husband who sat on the couch, grew distant, and started making jokes at her expense at family dinners. Their daughter, Keisha, 31 years old and fiercely protective of her mother, had entered the family on the Family Feud application. She had written in the notes section, "My mom has given everything to this family. She deserves something good to happen to her." The producers had read that and called them within a week. On the day of taping, Donna wore a deep green dress she had bought 3 years ago and never had occasion to wear. She had done her hair. She was nervous and excited in equal measure. Gerald wore a sports jacket and seemed relaxed, maybe a little too relaxed. Nobody in that family knew that within the hour, Gerald would say the thing he said, and nobody knew that Steve Harvey would do what he did next. The Carson family faced off against the Williams family from Atlanta in what should have been a lively, entertaining match. The Carsons were loud and funny. Gerald especially. He had the kind of natural charisma that cameras love. He was quick with a quip. He fed off the crowd. Steve Harvey had hosted Family Feud long enough to read a room in seconds. He liked Gerald immediately. He joked with him. He played off his energy. The audience was warm and engaged. And then, right in the middle of a perfectly good game of Family Feud, everything changed. The question on the board was simple enough. Name something a husband does that his wife finds annoying. The category got a big laugh from the audience right away. Steve turned to Gerald, the obvious choice to answer, and gave him that classic Steve Harvey look. Eyebrows raised, microphone ready. "Gerald, you're a married man. I can see that beautiful woman sitting right there," Steve said, gesturing toward Donna in the front row. "What does a husband do that his wife finds annoying?" Gerald grinned. He leaned into the microphone like he was about to deliver the best line of his life. "Honestly, Steve, the most annoying thing I ever did was marry her in the first place." The audience gave a nervous, uncertain laugh, the kind of laugh people give when they're not sure if something was a joke or not. A few people chuckled. A few went quiet. Donna in the front row smiled, but it was the practiced smile of a woman who had learned to smile through things, the kind of smile that doesn't reach the eyes. Steve Harvey did not smile. He held the microphone. He looked at Gerald. Then he looked at Donna. Then he looked back at Gerald. The studio went very quiet. Say that again, Steve said. His voice had dropped. It wasn't angry, not yet. But it was serious in a way that made the room shift. Gerald, still riding his own momentum, laughed and repeated it. I said marrying her was my biggest mistake, man. I'm just being honest. More uncomfortable laughter from the audience. Some people were looking at Donna now. Her smile had faded. She was looking down at her hands. Keisha, seated next to her mother, had gone completely still. Her jaw was tight. Her eyes were fixed on her father with an expression that was equal parts fury and heartbreak. Steve Harvey set the microphone down on the podium. He took a slow step back. He looked out at the audience for a moment, then back at Gerald. When he spoke, his voice was calm and measured. But everyone in that room understood that what was coming wasn't casual. Brother, Steve said, I need you to look at your wife right now. Gerald turned toward Donna, still grinning slightly, still not reading the room. No, Steve said. Really look at her. Something changed in Gerald's expression when he actually looked at Donna. Really looked at her. Her head was slightly bowed. She was not crying, but she was not smiling either. She looked like a woman absorbing a blow she had learned, over many years, to absorb quietly. The audience had gone completely silent. That woman, Steve said, his voice carrying to every corner of the studio, has been sitting in bleachers in the cold for you. She has raised your children. She has worked when you couldn't. She has been the foundation of everything you call your life. He paused. And you just called her a mistake on national television. In front of her children. Gerald opened his mouth, closed it. For the first time all afternoon, the big, charming, easy-going football coach from Memphis had nothing to say. Keisha, in the front row, had tears running down her face. She reached over and took her mother's hand. The audience, a moment ago laughing at Gerald's joke, was now completely with Steve. You could feel it. That collective shift in a room when something real breaks through the surface of entertainment and lands on something true. What happened next was the moment no producer had scripted and no camera had anticipated. Donna Carson raised her head. She looked directly at Steve Harvey, not at her husband, not at the audience, but at Steve, and said, quietly and clearly, "It's okay, Mr. Harvey. I'm used to it." 4 words, and those 4 words did more damage than anything Gerald had said, because they told the whole truth of it. This wasn't a one-time joke. This was the texture of a life. This was what 32 years had sometimes felt like to a woman who had given everything and learned over time to expect nothing back. Steve Harvey looked at Donna for a long moment. "No, ma'am," he said softly. "It is not okay. And I need you to hear that from somebody today." What Steve did next was entirely off script. He walked away from the podium, away from the game, away from the format, away from the show, and he walked toward Donna Carson. He crouched down slightly so that he was at eye level with her. The cameras followed. The audience watched in complete silence. "Can I ask you something?" he said to her. Donna nodded. "How long have you two been married?" 32 years in April, she said. Steve nodded slowly. 32 years. And in those 32 years, what is the thing you are most proud of? Donna thought for a moment. Then she said, "My kids, and the fact that I never gave up on my family, even when it was hard." Steve stood up. He turned to face the audience and the cameras. And he said something that the audience would talk about for years afterward. "Let me tell you something about marriage," Steve said, his voice full and steady. "I have been married. I have been divorced. I have made mistakes that I am not proud of. I am not up here claiming to be perfect." The audience was riveted. "But I'll tell you what I know. A woman who stays. A woman who shows up. A woman who works when you can't. Who raises your kids. Who sits in the cold rain to watch you do what you love. That woman is not a mistake. That woman is the reason you're still standing." He turned back toward Gerald, who by now looked like a man who had just realized, perhaps for the first time, the weight of what he had said. "I know you were joking," Steve said to him. "I know that's what you were doing. But I need you to understand something. Some jokes land and some jokes wound. And that one wounded." I saw it on her face before she could put the smile back on. Gerald was quiet. He was not the charming, easy-going man who had walked into the studio 2 hours ago. He looked older, somehow, smaller. "I'm going to give you a chance to fix it," Steve said. "Right here, right now, in front of everybody." What came next nobody expected, least of all Gerald. He looked at his wife. And then, slowly, he walked toward her. He didn't say anything for a long moment. He just stood in front of her. His daughter Keisha, still holding her mother's hand, looked up at her father with an expression that held 31 years of watching, waiting, and hoping. "Donna," Gerald said. His voice cracked on the single word. "I'm sorry." It was quiet enough in that studio that you could hear everything. "I don't think it was a mistake," he said. "Think I just got old and lazy and I forgot what I had. I forgot what you were. I forgot everything you gave up for me." He stopped, breathed, "And I'm sorry I said it, and I'm sorry for every time I made you feel like it was true." Donna Carson looked at her husband, and then she did the thing that brought the entire studio to its feet. She stood up, and she hugged him, not a polite hug, not a performance for the cameras, a real hug, the kind that two people share when they've been through everything together and one of them finally says the thing the other one has needed to hear for longer than either of them wants to admit. The audience erupted. Steve Harvey stood back and let it happen. He didn't say a word. He just nodded, like a man who had seen what he needed to see. Before the segment ended, Keisha, the daughter who had written on that application form that her mom deserved something good, stepped forward. She looked at Steve Harvey with tear-streaked cheeks and said, "Thank you for seeing her. Thank you for saying the thing we've all wanted to say. My mom has spent her whole life making sure everyone else was okay. Today somebody finally made sure she was okay." Steve reached out and squeezed Keisha's hand. "Your mama raised you right," he said. "That tells me everything about who she is." Whiz. When the taping ended, and the studio lights dimmed, the Carson family stayed on the stage for a long time. Gerald and Donna sat together, not dramatically, not for the cameras, but just sitting side by side the way two people do when something real has shifted between them. Staff members from the production team came up to Donna to tell her she had moved them. Audience members lingered. A woman in her 60s came forward, a complete stranger, and took Donna's hands in hers and said, "You reminded me of my own marriage. Thank you for not walking away." Steve Harvey spent time with the family after the taping, off camera without the microphone. He talked with Gerald man to man. He talked with Donna. He talked with Keisha. By all accounts, he stayed long after he needed to, because something about this family had gotten under his skin. When the episode aired 6 weeks later, the clip of Steve Harvey's response went viral within hours. By the end of the first day, it had been viewed over 8 million times across social media platforms. By the end of the week, it was one of the most shared clips in Family Feud history. But what was striking about the response was not just how many people watched it, it was what they said about it. Thousands of women wrote in to say that Donna's 4 words, "I'm used to it," had described their own lives. Thousands of men wrote in to say that watching Gerald break down had made them think about whether they had ever made the person they loved feel invisible. Marriage counselors shared the clip with their clients. Pastors played it in sermons. A sociology professor at a university in Chicago used it as a discussion starter in a class on long-term relationships and emotional labor. The clip sparked a national conversation about something that rarely gets talked about openly: the quiet ways that long marriages can drift into patterns of dismissal and the enormous cost those patterns have on the person who keeps showing up anyway. 3 months after the episode aired, Family Feud reached out to the Carson family for a follow-up. What the producers found surprised even them. Gerald Carson had signed up for couples counseling, his idea, not Donna's. He had called the therapist the week after the taping, before the episode even aired. He later said that Steve Harvey's words had hit him differently off camera, in the quiet of the drive home, in the middle of the night, in the bathroom mirror, every morning for 2 weeks straight. "I kept hearing him say, 'That woman is the reason you're still standing,'" Gerald said in the follow-up interview. "And I kept thinking, he's right. She is. and I had been treating her like she was furniture. Donna's account was quieter, but no less honest. I had stopped expecting anything, she said. Not because I had given up on Gerald, but because I had stopped believing that things could change. That day on Family Feud, when Steve Harvey stood up for me, was the first time in a long time that I believed something could be different. 6 months after the episode aired, Gerald and Donna Carson took the trip to New Orleans that Donna had been asking about for 11 years. Gerald posted one photo on Facebook, the two of them at a restaurant on Frenchman Street, dressed up, laughing. The caption read, 32 years. And it keeps getting better. Thank you for not giving up on me. The post received over 40,000 likes from people who had watched their episode. In a later interview, Steve Harvey was asked about the Carson family moment, whether it had been planned, whether he had known it would go viral, whether he had calculated the impact. He shook his head. I didn't plan any of that, he said. You know what happened. I looked at that woman's face, and I saw my mother. I saw my grandmother. I saw every woman who ever held a family together with nothing but love and determination and got very little credit for it, and something in me just couldn't sit there and let it pass. He paused. The thing that got me wasn't what Gerald said. It was her response. I'm used to it. That right there is the saddest 4 words I've ever heard on my show, because what she was really saying was, nobody usually stops this. And I just decided I was going to stop it. He was asked what advice he would give to husbands watching the clip. Look at the person who chose you. He said simply, look at them the way you looked at them at the beginning. Not past them. At them. And if you can't remember the last time you made them feel like they were worth choosing, that's the thing you need to fix today. Not tomorrow. Today. The Carson family was not the only family changed by what happened in that studio. A couple from Ohio who had been on the verge of divorce watched the clip together. The wife said she had sent it to her husband without a note, just the link. He watched it alone. When he came downstairs, he sat next to her on the couch and said, I don't want to be Gerald before the apology. I want to be Gerald after. They entered counseling the following week. A 60-year-old man from Texas posted a long reflection on a Facebook group for retired veterans. He wrote about watching the clip and realizing that he had never once thanked his wife of 34 years for the sacrifices she had made while he was deployed. He wrote, I called her after I watched it. I said things I should have said 20 years ago. She cried. I cried. We're going to be all right. A women's shelter in Atlanta printed out Steve Harvey's words from the clip and put them on the wall of their support group meeting room. The director explained, for a lot of the women we serve, they have been told their whole lives that accepting disrespect is just what you do. To hear a prominent man on national television say, it is not okay, that matters. The story of what happened on Family Feud that day is not really about a game show. It's about something that most of us know but rarely say out loud. Long marriages are hard. Not just in the dramatic, crisis-filled ways that movies show us, but in the slow, ordinary ways that don't make for good television. The slow drift toward taking someone for granted. The little dismissals that pile up over years. The way people who love each other can still, over time, stop really seeing each other. What Steve Harvey did in that studio was simple. He stopped the game and said this person matters. What she has done matters. How she feels right now matters. He gave Gerald a mirror, and he gave Donna a witness. And sometimes, that is all it takes to change the direction of a life. In the follow-up segment, Donna Carson was asked what she would say to other women who might be watching and seeing themselves in her story. She thought about it for a long moment. Then she said, don't get so used to it that you forget you deserve better. I almost did. I want women to remember that loving your family is a beautiful thing, but you are also a person who deserves to be seen and appreciated. Don't wait 32 years to ask for that. Ask for it now. She smiled. A real smile this time. The kind that reaches the eyes. And if someone stands up for you the way Mr. Harvey stood up for me, let them. You don't have to say it's okay when it isn't. You're allowed to be seen. Gerald Carson walked into that studio as a man who didn't realize what he had. He walked out as a man who had looked it in the eye, said he was sorry, and decided to do better. Donna Carson walked in as a woman who had learned to absorb hurt quietly. She walked out having been seen, fully, publicly, tenderly, by someone with the courage to stop the show and say she matters. And Steve Harvey, who has hosted this show through thousands of games, millions of laughs, and every variety of human moment, would later say that the Carson family segment was one of the moments he was most glad to have been present for. "I didn't win anything that day," he said. "I didn't score any points. But I said what needed to be said, and if it helped even one person go home and look at the person they love differently, then that's the whole point. Because that's what love is. Not the grand gestures. Not the highlight, real moments. It's the decision, made every single day, to look at the person across the table from you and remember why you chose them. To say you are not a mistake. You never were.